We are extremely blessed to have Tom Carmazzi here, and with all the wisdom that he has and all the experiences that he has in his life that he's going to share with us. His topic today, as I want to make it clear, is on page 23, is Christ, Company, and Culture when they meld together. Christ, Company, and Culture when they meld together is what Tom's going to be sharing about. And as I mentioned earlier, before we went to the breakout sessions, Tom refocused his life in a new season in 2019. There's nothing about retirement in Scripture. He refocused his life in a new season to share a lot of the wisdoms that he's had with all of us and to help build leaders. And boy, what some tremendous wisdom he's going to be sharing with us today. And just to share a little bit about his business background, Tom was 4 years in public accounting with Grant Thornton. He was 17 years with Cooper Industries, acquired by Eaton, and involved with several different positions, including mergers and acquisitions, and he was also vice president of operations of a division of Cooper Industries. And most recently, he was 20 years with Tudhill Corporation, which he became the CEO in 2011. So Tom, we're going to bring you up. We're going to have you share with us some of that wisdom and that you've acquired over all these decades in corporate America. And we're blessed to have you, blessed and honored to have you here with us. So let's bring Tom up.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was very impressive.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. So as Mark indicated, what we're going to be talking about today is the intersection of culture, company, and Christ. Before I go there, this is my first time at this conference. And I've observed folks, I've talked to folks, been to a couple of the sessions. And this journey, my spiritual journey, is relatively new. And I just want you all to know that you all have lifted me on my journey. And I share with folks, last year I was in kindergarten and now I'm in elementary school. And I walked in here maybe in third grade, but just listening to others, you sharing your faith and seeing how real it is for you calls me forth. And I just want to share that with all of you, and thank you so very much for that. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Gosh. And also Bruce and Laura, a wonderful job. What I've seen, I've just been extremely thankful for. So thank the two of them as well for what they've done here. It's great stuff. So I've got this device up here, and the way I use it, I have a bad pattern. One of it is I'm kind of a time-based guy. So I've started my clock because I've told how much time I've got. So a little bit more about me and my journey is that I'm up here as a practitioner. I'm not up here as the expert. And so what you're going to see is various slides which I have been a part of in some form or fashion, or has helped me get clarity on my journey. So not the expert, practitioner, step in the arena most days and get kind of beat up and bloodied, but I don't want to be on any other journey. From a leadership point of view, most of my journey was about the figures and not about faces. I didn't see faces. I'm not proud about that at all, but I was very good with numbers and I was able to hit them quarter by quarter. I got recognized, promoted, incentivized, and I was real good at it, but I didn't like myself. I couldn't look myself in the mirror. Just because I was making choices that were affecting people's lives, and it didn't affect me. And it just started away. And so the last part of my career, I started to see more and more faces, and that truly was a blessing. Spiritually, started out as a serious skeptic. Serious skeptic. This whole thing of surrendering, pride, and ego held me back. And as I continue on this journey, I know that's the only way. I know that's the only way. And again, thanks to all of you, because I've seen this modeled. It's one thing to hear about it or read about it, but to see it modeled is so much more powerful. So thank you for that. So what we're going to talk about today is the call to action. You know, why are we here? Why is it so important for us to be here? What's going on in our world that's really important for us to step in and no longer be on the sidelines? What's going on? And we'll go through that. Then we'll talk about the top two circles, that culture and company. There's been a lot done there. A lot of companies have done some amazing stuff. Just touch on that briefly. Then we'll go to the intersection. Well, what's that about? And we'll talk about that. Then we're going to talk about you. And then we'll talk about how you know you're having an impact on the kingdom. And then we'll talk about the next steps. Before I get going, just want to make sure you all are ready to do a little participation. Yeah, it's kind of sheepish laugh. Yeah, okay. But seriously, if you got to listen to me for 45 minutes, so I'm going to get you to participate, and I'm really interested in your perspectives. So, what is this call to action? The first one there talks about the family, and this has been going on for decades. This is nothing new. You're familiar with this. The little thing I'd like to add is what we're seeing now, what I'm seeing now, is that even though we may be present at home, physically present, we're not there. I'm not there. I've got this, or I've got my computer, or I'm still at work. Even though I'm refocused, I can go home and still be busy with stuff. And so what that means is someone else is taking the responsibility of our children. It's not their job. They're not qualified for that. That's my job. That's my job. And so that takes us out of relationship with folks that are very important in our lives. Next one there talks about the values. The values. And so I mentor MBA students and executives, and where I love to start is the values. And it's a simple question. Tell me about your values. And the MBA students, that kind of puts them on stop. They're like, on the executives, they kind of have this inner core, but they're not quite certain of it, or they don't articulate it real well. And so we usually spend the 4 or 5 sessions getting clear on those, and yet it's much broader than the folks that I'm interacting with. This week in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article there about how what people think are important in the United States is changing. Patriotism was 72%. Now it's at 39% that the people believe that's important. Religion dropped almost as half as well. There's a shift going on here that's very, very important for us to be aware of and grab onto those core values and not let them go and have those be our internal compass. The inactivity of faith. Inactivity of faith. It seems as though right now when it's the most important, we seem to be stepping back. And it's time to step in. So what do I mean by that? So I'm very active in a large Catholic university. They took the crosses out of the classroom because they didn't want to offend somebody. The prevalence of artificial stimulus. We all know about drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol. Fentanyl is a big deal. Really big, big deal. But there's another drug that keeps growing and growing and growing, and it's back to social media. Social media. It takes us away. It takes us out of relationship. All these things are stealing relationship. So I was skiing a couple weeks ago. On the chairlift, I felt as though I was interrupting people because as soon as they get on, they grab a hold of this. But what an opportune moment to be in dialogue with someone. They're captive. They're right there. They can't go anywhere safely, you know. And so here it is, and yet it's almost like I started making a point of it. You know, I'd butt in, you know, and so how's your day? Fine. All right. What have you been doing? Where have you been skiing? All over. Okay, all right. So the last one there is substitute the drama for the dialogue. Instead of taking a position, why don't I think of what's their perspective? Have a little patience. It seems as though right now we're just built for the fight. We're built for the fight. And I don't know about you, but when I'm in that fight or flight mode, my creativity, my listening skills, they're horrible. They're horrible. So when I think of this right here as the call for action, it really is this thing that it's pulling us away from relationship. And by design, by God's design, we are designed to be in relationship. Anyone here ever heard of oxytocin? Yeah, right? Oxytocin is a chemical in each and every one of us. And when it's released, guess what happens? The peripheral vision gets better, creativity gets better, immune system gets better. So God, in essence, was saying, when you care for someone, when you're in deep relationship with them, I'll make you even stronger. Whoa, pretty cool stuff. So by design, we're created to be in relationship, and yet these things take us out of it. So here I'm going to talk about the first two circles very, very quickly, because again, there's a lot been written on them. But here is just how powerful, just culture and company. Christ now is, we're not talking about him yet. He's coming. But right here it is, those two things, this book written, Firms of Endearment, FOE, it's that big one on the left there. FOE was a book written about private and publicly traded companies and what happened when your employees felt as though they were endeared. Well, you outperform the S&P 500 4-1. Ooh, me being a numbers guy, that's pretty cool. The book written by Jim Collins, Good to Great, you also outperform them. Along came Patrick Lencioni, wrote a book called The Advantage, 2007-2008. And he talked about the health of an organization. So you got Company A, and in terms of talent and skill, Company A, they're 5 out of 10. They're 5 out of 10. They're kind of mid-range. On the right, Company B, they're 8 out of 10. Whoa, some really talented cats, right? And if that's all you know, which one of those companies do you want to be a part of? How many want to be a part of A? Raise your hand. Yeah, nobody. Lencioni comes along and says, well, wait a minute, that's not the whole story. Company A, they've got a culture that is truly energized. They feel endeared. I mean, it's great. Turnover's low. There's no backstabbing, gossiping, anything. Company B, oops. Yeah, highly toxic, high turnover. Over the long term, what I have seen is people will not outperform their culture. So here you have these highly talented cats, okay? They're not going to play full out because they're afraid. They're afraid. Because as soon as they do, someone stabs them in the back because they feel threatened by them. So here are some, so as I said, in my career before I refocused, I really love the quotes. I love the quotes. And so these were folks at Tuthill. After we had these 3-day leadership training sessions, and they were 3 days off-site, 12 people in a semicircle, knees to knees, not any tables. And so the first session was all about you as a leader, going really, really deep, who you are. The next session, another three-day session, was you involved with others. And then the third session was to go even deeper, excuse me. And so these 3-day sessions, and so this woman had just finished up the third day, and now she's ready for, the first session, now she's ready for the second session. I would be up at the front of the room on those 4 times a year, not because I was the expert, to develop relationships, which I wasn't good at, also to show support, and to grow myself as a leader. So I was up front of the room for her on the first time, so now she's coming back for the second. She says, you saved my marriage. I said, I didn't save your marriage, you did that. I mean, that's a good day when someone comes up and talks about something so dear to them that the training had an impact on them. The next one talks about, I've created deeper relationships, and the rest of that sentence goes, in 3 weeks here than I did in 3 years in my other company. Third one, if it impacts others, 1/10 the impact it had on me, never stop. Never stop. This was a guy that, so every year I'd go to every plant and I'd give them kind of a plant-wide update. This guy says 200 people. This guy comes right up on me, big guy. And he's finger pointing, cussing, all that kind of stuff. And so fortunately, got him to go back and be seated. And now he goes to our session. He makes a point to come up to me and says, that. Holy cow. This guy had a rough childhood, very rough. I thought being a hero was good. I have held people small. That's me. So part of this training that, I was a part of, as I said, was also lifting me up. I love being the hero. I love coming in and saving the day. Hero needs 2 other people. Who do they need? Need a victim, and they need a villain. Okay, I'd make those people up. That's how serious my addiction was. The issue with that is when I'm doing that, we talked earlier today about legacy. There is no legacy with a hero. None, 0. Okay? So for me, it's an addiction I fight every single day. I tell people I'm a recovering hero. and my wife knows that very well. So then I'm leaving. I now know what I want. This was a high-potential guy running one of our plants. He was about 28, 29, gave me his resignation. I said, Nick, what's going on? He said, I'm going back to Iowa. I said, I don't have a plant in Iowa. He says, I know, but I'm going back there to pick apples from the tree that I planted with my father. Now I want to plant those with my son. I want to teach my son to drive a tractor like my dad taught me. Through one of those sessions, he got very clear on what he wanted. Man, I tell you, I told him I didn't want to compete with that, but if we bought a plant in Iowa, I'd love to have him come work for us. So these are things that get in close relationship that people change, they share, and it's such wonderful moments. So what is this intersection? What the heck is this? So based on, as Mark said, based on my refocus, I've been working with a couple of companies on this. And I do this pro bono. I didn't retire to take another job or refocus another job. This came out of a Bible study that at the end of the three circles, at the end of the Bible study, the facilitator said, hey, how are you going to carry this ministry forward? This popped into my head. So right then and there, I knew that my time at Tuthill, not really any kind of business like that I was intended to go refocus. So the culture and company, you guys know about that. That's stuff that, especially the company side, it's the fuel for the rocket. It has the processes and development of folks. And on the left-hand side, the culture side, it's really about that getting them engaged, getting their hearts. But then in comes Christ. Christ brings that holistic purpose. Christ brings that heart and soul. Christ brings that life to the journey. So you blend those together, and so what happens, and this is just my makeup, okay? I wish I could say, and I did this study of 2,000 companies, but what I have seen is spirited communities, astounding impact, a feeling of ministry, and a sense of eternity, and this holistic purpose. So let me just, well, what the heck? Let's get you all involved, okay? So we're going to talk about those three circles. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you're like, Tom, this is not school. You are not going to have us come up on the board and write things. But I will say, if any of you get this answer wrong, you will come up here and write 1,000 times. So the question is, if you think of the organization that you're associated with right now on a scale of 1 to 10, so I'm in the company circle, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that my company in terms of, if you're not for profit, this is going to be a little challenging, financial performance is nailing it, top 1%, okay? In terms of servicing our customers, no quality issues, no past due backlog, they love us to death. One is financially, we're really not doing well. Break even at best, struggling, customer-wise. So I want you to think of a number between 1 and 10. Think of a number between 1 and 10. I'm going to ask you to blurt them out. And when you do, if you hear another number different than yours, please hold on to your number. Okay? So start with company. Blurt out the number between 1 and 10 for your organization. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for culture. Okay, now culture, again, a 10 is turnover is 0. You got people knocking at your door wanting to come to your company. Okay, that there's no toxicity. You have a great kind of thing. Everyone's very positive. They got clarity on their goals. They're focused. Obviously, one, it's highly toxic, an awful lot of turnover. Okay, you can't keep folks. Okay, and every now and then you walk in a room, it gets quiet. That's usually not a good sign. Okay? All right, so 1 to 10, culture. Okay, Christ. Those of you that want to jump ahead and give me the averages of these. Okay, Christ. So Christ, in the context of these three circles, what I'm talking about is, So where is Christ in your company? So if Christ is in your company, not only is he on the wall, but he's in meetings, he's helping you make decisions. You think about what is the impact on eternity, okay? Christ somehow is showing up in your job descriptions, somehow showing up in your evaluations, whatever frequency it is that you have them, okay? So he is very present at a 10. Okay, at a 1, it's not like it's a bad thing. I mean, you still got the top 2 circles, but he's not present. He really isn't present. That's a 1. Okay, so Christ. 8. Wait. Did I hear 1? Okay, thanks. And I'm not passing judgment, please. All right, 8, 1.
9.
10 over here.
Good for you. Okay. So who'd like to take, let me see, that's 10, that's 20 divided by 5. No. What is it, 6? Okay, thank you. What about here? 8, okay, thank you. What about here? Holy cow. Pretty high number. 7? Okay, thank you very much. So you think about these 3 circles. Now, we're sitting pretty tight here. Culture is an 8, Christ is a 7, company is a 6. I'm going to intentionally give a little bit of a spread here in order to make the point. Let's say that culture is an 8, Christ is a 5, company is a 3. What do you guys think? If that were your business or your organization, what would you be thinking? Needs improvement. Needs improvement. Which one of those numbers is most at risk? The high one. Okay? If those other numbers don't rise, the highest number will regress towards the lowest. So if it's your company that happens to be an 8, culture a 5, Christ a 3, that 8, unless those others come up quickly, will start to regress down towards the others. Okay? We're going to come back to this. So how do you take this all the way to traction? And so I'm going to talk about 2 different businesses. But first, you create the Christian goals. Then you have holistic goals. Then you update the processes. And then, if it makes sense and if they want to do it, then you get into mentoring of the executive team. So let's talk first about the manufacturing company. So this right here, they come right out. So what this is that I work with the leadership team, and all I do is facilitate. It starts with, so tell me, what are the Christian values of your organization? They have said this is what they want to do. I don't just knock on the door, okay? And so this company said, well, first we want to have like a purpose statement. And boom, first sentence, Christian faith-based company, where our values provide the foundation. Then they came up with the 3 values. They came up with those, and all I ask is that think of somewhat uncommon words so that it'll stimulate the dialogue. And then you make the definitions. Don't go to dictionary.com. And so you can see here, they came up with selfless, curiosity, and honorable. I think that's pretty cool. And you got things like forgiveness in there, Christian value words. I heard someone say, well, these are kind of wishy-washy. I said, well, let me tell you a story. This is just 2 months ago. The CEO of this company presented to the board. He said, here is my compensation package for 2022, and here's my recommendation for 2023. One of the board members raised his hand and said, the 2022, tell me how that links back to the values. And these values are only about 15 months old. So he's like, that's a good question. I didn't look there. This is common. When they first come out, it's not like they're already a part of who they are. They need some type of structure to remind them. And he said, what are you thinking specifically? He said, well, honorable talks about accountability. You miss the forecast, and your lead times are out 100% over what the market says they need. The CEO didn't say another word. He said, I'll get back to you. And you can imagine he lowered his recommendation. So here is an industrial distributor. They've got 25 locations, $80, $90 million business. Same process, shepherd, grace, light, and love. I mean, how cool is that? And that team came up with that. That team, light, that's the first time I've seen that. It's just truly, truly remarkable. So here you had these two companies. Now I want to share a process that used at Tuthill. This looks pretty big and onerous. And the key is this fits the size of your business. Tom, what does that mean? We had multiple steps here, as you can see. If you're not the size of the company that we were, you don't need all those steps. Okay, but the key is taking this upper level, 3 circles. For us, we were a manufacturer all the way to the shop floor. So the operator knows what he or she, how they link all the way back to those 3 circles. So let me just quickly go through a couple of these. So this right here is our version of a vision and mission statement, and we call it the compass. And so you notice it starts with the purpose. Our purpose was to wake the world. And that sentence in there says, when we come alive, the world comes along. That's back to oxytocin. It was, how do we show up? How do we show up? The next one talks about a legion of like-hearted with astounding impact. A legion of like-hearted, not like-minded, we said like-hearted. And there it talks about an ingenious company supporting. So right there you find out that the company is not the end game. Spirited communities, and also it talked about, wow, flourishing families. Making real things that really make a difference. And so there it said that we're a manufacturer, we make stuff, but what kind of stuff do we make? Well, we make things that make a difference. And for us, when we would go to buy a company, first off, they had to be a manufacturer, but we wanted to make sure that, that they made things which weren't common. We didn't want to be buying commodities. So it sounds like a clever little statement, but it really came to life. And then it talks about heart, head, hands. Start with the heart. And then dare to make better was our continuous improvement. So each one of those words was chosen. This is where the owner took 19 people from throughout the organization, all the way to the shop floor, locked us into a room, and said, guys, we're going to come up with something that's truly ours, truly ours. And then down to the values: curiosity, clarity, grit, grace, gratitude, and love. Those last 3, I selfishly wanted those for me. Grace, gratitude, and love, because that wasn't who I was then. And so let me give you an example. At one point, I ran a 1 million square foot plant, 1,200 machine tools, aluminum foundry, iron foundry, 3,000 people in the bargaining unit. And this is back in my figures days. And so I was going to hit the quarterly number, called the executive committee together of the union, said, hey, had all my charts and graphs, and we got to lay off 200 people 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Your supervisor will tell you who they are. And I said it just like that. President in the back of the room, president of the union in the back of the room says, Tom, we get that you're smart. The problem is you don't care. So I was hit. And the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'm not really certain what I said or what happened. I know that when I walked out of there, I reminded them, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I looked at that president of the union, and this was an act of God. I said, thank you. I don't know why I did that, because that's not the way I felt. But that came out of my mouth. That was an act of God. So I got home, and I'm still rocked, and Deb looks at me, and she says, well, tell me, what's going on? What happened to you today? And I told her, and she says, you know what you got to do? I said, I have no idea. I have no idea. I'm rocked. She says, well, you got to work in every single department. I said, this is 1 million square feet under roof. She says, I know. You got to work in every single department. Over the next 3 months, that's exactly what I did. And her spirit was to get to know them, and I'm a finance guy. I got scared to death out there. And they showed me such kindness. I mean, there could have been an industrial accident, and it had been written up as that. And I could have been seriously injured, killed. None of that. They could not have been nicer. Truly an example for me. Truly an example for me. And then the last one there talks about, oh my gosh, where does this start? Well, it starts here. Don't look at someone else. This is busier than the Dickens. It's called Ho Chi Minh Planning Matrix, and it's X Matrix. It's got a lot of different names, but the spirit of it is you start it at the left, high level, and to the right ends up on people's valuations. It just keeps going lower. This next matrix here is just showing you that you create what makes sense for you. This is an internal document. We made it up because it's what we felt was required to communicate all the way to traction. And so those intersections look busier than the Dickens, but at the time it made sense. So here we are, but this is the job description now. This is a real job description. Guess what's first on the job description? Curiosity, clarity, grit, grace, gratitude, and love. So we hired to that. We were first interested in who you are versus what you do. Who you are versus the resume. Here's a real-life evaluation. Notice the first section of that evaluation is those values. Those values, curiosity, clarity, grit, grace, gratitude, and love. And what we did is we color-coded them. If you were green in them, way to go. If you were blue, there's some opportunity. If you were red, giddy up, okay? So now we're back to you guys. I'd like you all to stand up. Thank you, beautiful. Okay, so this is a check-in on you now because you all are leading this journey. You all are leading this journey. So let's check in on you, and it says, the question is, where are you in your Christ journey? And we're going to use your right arm, okay? Not yet. Your right arm. So this is a 10. This is a 1. A 10 is, I'm modeling Christ daily. I mean, I got a couple of blips, a couple do-overs, but for the most part, I mean, I seriously model Christ. 1 is, doesn't mean you're an atheist, but it's just, you know, he's not really front and center, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, and now with your eyes closed, put your right arm out on a scale of 1 to 10. 10, 5, you know, you're going to show where you believe you are in terms of your journey in Christ. Okay? Leave your arms there, open your eyes, and look around. Leave your arms there, open your eyes, and look around. Great stuff. Okay. Wait, what? Oh my gosh. Okay, so now, please put them down, please. Sorry. So this is very, very true, right? This is what I see a lot. So, somewhere in here, absolutely. We got some amazing folks. Okay, somewhere in here. And so, how would your life be different? Is all you did? Let's say you were a 5. You went from a 5 to a 6. That's all you did. Just went from a 5 to a 6. How would your life be different? Blurt something out.
Peace.
Huh? Peace. What else? Fulfillment. Fruit. Impactful. Joy. I mean, isn't that some cool stuff? I mean, wow. Wow. And it's like you had to go 10, you had to ding the bell. All you had to do is go up 1 level. And so who gets to do that? Who does that? Me. Yeah, me. Yeah. Who goes from elementary school to middle school? I control that. I'm at choice. Please sit down. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so why is this important? So this is we were very clever at Tut Hill. I'll bring it in. I was real clever at Tut Hill. I called this the 4-stick graph. Oh gosh, I need to hang out with Deb more. But the spirit of it is that first stick is the leader, the next one's the team, that third stick is structures, and that fourth stick we used to say was success. Since retirement, I kind of jazzed it up a little bit, and so it starts with the Christian leader and ends with kingdom success. And so if you think about it, you know, any type of organization, it follows the leader. So it goes left to right. It doesn't go right to left. Okay, it goes left to right. And so let's go back to this. Right? So wherever you were here, put it on that. And you're that first stick. And so now, if your organization is above there, so like I'm a 5, and I've got a team that's a 7, remember back to the dialogue we had before? What's the likelihood that they'll stay at 7s if you're a 5? So we've talked about John Maxwell a couple of times here. He wrote this book about 30 years ago. He's written so many books, it's crazy. But he wrote this book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And then there he had this law called the Law of the Lid. You all know what that was about? You're not. Yes, yes. It says that if I don't continue my climb, I become the lid. I become the lid. So I got to continue climbing. Otherwise, I become the governor on the whole organization. So that's why this is really important. So now I'm going to cover, so what is required of you? And there's a couple of things here. The first one is that top part, that's kind of the standard government issue if you're the leader of your organization. The bottom part is now we breathe Christ in. And so it mentions there about modeling Christ. And for me, that's a huge call. Huge, huge, huge call. So many days I want to do over, okay? The next one talks about be the real you versus the persona. So the persona for CEO and that kind of thing, and, you know, was, well, gosh, I mean, how do I become the CEO? I'm the smartest guy in the room. I got all the answers. That's not true. It's flat out not true. I know I'm not the smartest guy in this room, and I definitely know I don't have all the answers given some results I've had over the years. Okay, so then this thing about vulnerability. So I used to think that was a huge sign of a weakness. Huge, and I was not going to do it. And so 4 times a year, I'd get the leadership team off-site, and we would talk about our lives. We wouldn't talk about the numbers. We wouldn't talk about strategy. We'd go off-site, and we'd just literally go around the horn, talk about how are things going with you holistically, personally, family. Just sit down, and it'd be all day. And so this one meeting, this person says to me, Tom, you know, how come you're always so cool? You never get upset. I said, well, you know, my dad told me. Dad told me, Tom, you get upset, you lose. She looked at me like she looked right through me. She said, there's more to it than that. And that was like touching the third rail. I didn't talk about it, and nobody. And so in my childhood, I saw a lot of rage, a lot of rage. And I was terrified that if I got frustrated or angry, I would skip those steps, and I'd go right to rage. And I know the way that affected me, and I was scared to death that I would show that to somebody else, and they would feel the way that I had felt. And I didn't want to model that because I didn't know how I'd back out of it, because I was so fearful they would see a side of me that they would never forgive. I had on a light blue shirt, and tears were flowing down. I didn't even realize it, and so I'm getting polka dots on my shirt. And now I am embarrassed. It's like, oh my gosh. And we took a break, and the guy walks up to me and he says, Tom, never stop. Never stop. I said, holy cow. What do you mean? He says, it gives us permission. It gives us permission. I mean, that's another amazing day. So here is about your stand. You as the leader, you will have this red rectangle. And this is someone that is saying, you know what, values, schmalues, yeah, I'm hitting the numbers. Leave me alone, okay? So what are you going to do? So one of the guys that I mentor, he's got 42 sales folks reporting to him. And he says, Tom, my number one performer, he's stomping all over those Christian values. I said, okay. What are you going to do? He said, Tom, he's a number one performer. I said, okay. What's your stand? He said, I got it. Thanks a lot. Hung up. So he tells me the next morning he met with this guy for breakfast and said, hey, I'm not kidding about these values. They're here to stay, and you're a choice. Either you follow them or you're going to have to go. Guy resigned. They're still on plan. Okay, pretty cool stuff. So this is quotes since I've refocused. So this is from these, you know, kind of folks pursuing the Christian values and deploying them throughout the organization. So one person said to me, my life has changed. So has my friend group. This is a younger guy. Of course, they're all young to me, but I mean, the younger guy, kind of 30s, and so he said, you know, every Friday night I go out with the guys, have a couple of beers, and then I get home a little later and spend time with the family. I said, I don't do that anymore. I'm very active now at the church, very active at home, and I'm volunteering more and more, and I'm already working a bunch, and some reason I find time. I'm like, that's pretty cool. And he said, yeah, the other day I dropped the kids off at school. I went into church and sat down and said a couple of prayers, and I came out, and one of my buddies said, so what were you doing in there? He said, I was having a conversation. Wow. Next one says, this is not what I expected. I'm so glad we're doing this. This was an MBA student. You remember I said we start with the values. They usually say, well, I want to know how to be a VP of sales, or I want to know how to run an organization or whatever. I said, cool, we'll get there, but we're going to start with the foundation. We're going to start with granite. And it's like, man, this isn't what I expected, but gosh, I'm so glad we're doing this. So glad. And then this next one is this isn't for everybody now. You will have folks which will push back. That's okay. That's today. They may come back later, but this is someone that I was mentoring, and for about 5 or 6 months, and all of a sudden he said, no, no, we're not going to continue. What's the matter? No, not going to talk about that kind of stuff. Okay, all right. Well, then I'm going to go on. Again, I don't want to become the law of the lid. So in these relationships, it's like, I'll come and meet you there, and we're going to kind of take little baby steps. But we're gonna keep going. And so here, I saw this guy probably about 6 months ago now, and said, "So how you doing?" He says, "Good." He says, "I'm making progress, and I know I'm going to call you, but not today." I said, "Okay, that's fine. You got my number, all right." So the key here is that if you have someone that's pushing back now, it's not saying you don't love them; they're bad people. That's not the case. Right now, they're in that comfort zone. And it's kind of nice for them. Over time, they may knock on your door or give you a call, and I know you'll be ready. So this is one of the things I do in facilitation at the end of the day. So this is a 2-day facilitation. We were preparing the goals for 2023. This was 3 months ago. I check in, and I use 3x5 cards because I don't want someone saying, you know what, gosh, I think just like Mark thinks. He's a brilliant guy. I think just like him. Because when they do that, they're robbing us from what they really think. They may have thought a lot like Mark, but they had a little nuance there that I want to get. So I asked them to fill out 3x5 cards. End of the day, write them out, 5 to 7 words, large font, so when you post them, you can read them. So this was a company that about 18 months ago had started on their Christian family values, what they called them, journey. In this meeting, we did not specifically reference those. We went through kind of some traditional stuff, and they came up every now and then. But here's the end of day one, that on the left. 25% of those stickies relate to Christian family values. Huge statement. Thought that was so cool. Day 2, same thing. So now we're at the end. So tell me, what are your 2 big takeaways? 25% of those reference Christian family values. One of those says, Christ turbocharges culture. Wow. This company had been pretty much flat sales, break even. They came out of this meeting with 17% growth in sales, and earnings was going to be 10% before tax of sales. It's only 2 months, but they're on track. That's no accident. No accident. So challenges to the journey. So pushback from fear. Pushback from fear. So for me, that's those folks that are like, you know what, Tom? Not today, but maybe tomorrow. Okay, all right. But we're gonna keep moving. How many of you watch The Chosen? I don't know, is maybe start of season 2 or end of season 1 with Nicodemus? Yeah, by the fountain. Wow, powerful stuff. And yet, Christ moved on. Would have loved to have had him, but he moved on, okay? It's the same thing we're having here. And so you're asking, heavens, I think of myself. My gosh, so here I am. I'm nailing figures, but I can't look myself in the mirror, but I'm scared. I'm afraid that if I start to change and see more faces and have a soft side, that, guess what? My boss is going to say, Tom, hey, you just missed the last quarter. You're out. Or I can't fend for my family. It's just not true. But I was making all that up. And the same with my faith journey. I'm a control guy. To surrender? That's scarier than all get out. Seriously. Scarier than all get out. So last night, the way that I usually prepare for these kind of things is I over-prepare. And last night, Kim, where is Kim? She was seated at the table. Yeah, Kim. And Kim says to me, you know, Tom, the Holy Spirit is going to speak through you. You're like fine preparing. Not exact words, but that's what I heard. And you can ask Deb. Deb knows this drill. She said, okay, so you want to go to a room? And I said, yeah, I got to get in here. And I'm like ready to start setting up. She says, you're going to set up? I said, no, I think Kim sent me a message. Really, the Holy Spirit sent me a message, and we went home. Devil becomes more rigorous. Devil becomes more rigorous. So I do daily journaling. So I get devotions, and then I journal. You know, I journal what was the learning, what was the message I think that God sent me through those. And then I also journal about, so what are my intentions for the day? And then lastly, what were the 3 positive things that happened yesterday? So as part of that devotion, about a month ago, I read, the devil doesn't have to get you to sin, he just has to keep you busy so that you don't focus on eternity. That was a bullseye right in the middle of the head. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so me. That's so me. So the devil will become much more rigorous, weaponizing of those unwilling. So when you got values like love and grace, and you've got that red rectangle, and you start having dialogues with them, don't be surprised. Again, I've had this happen to me specifically. A mentor of 20 years, amazing manufacturing guy. Everything I know about manufacturing, I owe it to him, and I'll never be able to repay him back. Never, ever. And so here it is. I got to ask him to leave because he thinks process over people. And I should have removed him, not 20 years, but two months. This is my biggest do-over in career-wise, with the exception of the figures. So I take him and say, you know, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go. I gave him the reasons. And he says, grace and love? You're a hypocrite. I said, actually, the reason I'm asking you to leave is because of grace and love. I've tried everything I can to awaken you as to your behaviors, and it's not working, so I'm going to hit you with a 2x4. You've got to go, and you're going now. And you know what? I received a text from him about 3 days ago that had this, and hearts. Yeah. Caretaking with the best of intentions. Caretaking with the best of intentions. If you think about a continuum, and caretaking's the hero. Okay, you think about a continuum. Caretaking's on one side, ruthless is on the other. And when I caretake, again, I'm holding you small. Ruthless, I absolutely believe I'm smarter than you, better than you, all that kind of stuff, and really holding you small. In the middle is you're a stand for them. It's no longer about me or you. You're a stand for them. And so that caretaking, again, so I did this thing, keep, stop, start. Keep, stop, start. What would Christ say about your year? What would Christ say? And I said, and don't think about Christ as all merciful and caretaking. Think about the Christ that's the stand. The stand. And so this isn't about being overly gracious and generous. It is to truly have compassion and love. And yet you're going to have compassion and love and make some tough choices. So that's it. That's the summary. Follow the Christ model first before the business model. Get that lined up. The challenge is going to be very, very tough, and yet I know dash darn well we can do this together, and just all the positive vibes that you all share with me today. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Tom, for that powerful message about culture, Christ, and company. And I probably remember the Peter Drucker quote that culture trumps strategy. And I hear often our CEO, Frank Harrison, CEO and chairman of Coca-Cola Consolidated, when he shares at T-Factor events, when we bring leaders in, he says culture trumps everything. Culture trumps everything. Just think about that. We're going to have time for a quick question or two for Tom. So anyone have a quick question for Tom? Love to entertain that. Got a microphone here, and while that microphone's going back, I'd like to ask Tom a quick question. I often get asked, being an older guy in my mid-60s, what would I tell my younger self? What would I tell my 30-year-old self? And I often share, boy, live a life of significance, not a life of success, the way the world defines success. And I'd like to ask Tom, for someone, a lot of younger people here in this audience, what would you share with what you've learned here in these years in business? What would you tell your younger self, your 25, 30-year-old self?
Well, thank you. So today it would be that top sentence, focus on the Christ model first. And before I started to really follow Christ, I would say it was focus on the people first. I was all about the figures, and my gosh, that's just personal experience. It's very destructive, and it doesn't mean to ignore them, but focus on those only. It's destructive, and so I would say the people in Christ.
Good feedback. Good feedback. Other questions? We've got someone with tremendous wisdom here, tremendous experience. What other questions would you have for Tom? I love the people first. One of the things we do when we equip our leaders at Coca-Cola Consolidated, we use what's called the LEADS model. And we take all of our leadership through that, and because we really want 17,000 servant leaders in our company. And the L for listen in LEADS, and the E for empathy, and the A for advocate, to be an advocate for employees, D for to help them develop, and S for self-reflection and prayer, what we did during the week and what we'd like to do better and do it better starting the following Monday. But when you say people, listen and empathy. And I tell you what, that makes a huge difference, caring for our people. Here's a question over here.
For somebody that is more task-oriented, like that's how I feel. I care about the people, but it doesn't come as naturally to me. Do people feel that it's authentic when you're giving of yourself to them, or do they feel like it's forced?
Well, I would be fibbing if I said that they always felt it was authentic. There are these 4 stages of learning, and the first one is I'm unconsciously incompetent, then I'm consciously incompetent, then I'm consciously competent, and then finally, I'm unconsciously competent. And so in this, I would say, consciously incompetent phase when I'm trying to climb, it was mechanical. But to step in and have the dialogue versus to step away was a really big deal. I also did ask for forgiveness a lot. So I would have a meeting, and my old patterns would show up, and I'd reconvene the meeting. I'd say, please come back in. What I just modeled, do not emulate it. Do not. I let the clock dictate my behavior. Please don't do that. And I would ask for help. I'd say, my patterns are deep. Please help me. Please help me. And I've been blessed that I've had a lot of people which have tried to help me.